Federal governor's appointments that are before this committee. We're going to start off with number one, but before we do that, Madam Secretary, let's establish a quorum. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senators Canella, Leyva here, Mitchell. Mitchell here, Fuller. Fuller here, DeLeon.
Here.
DeLeon here.
Okay, we've established a quorum. Colleagues, we're going to begin with file item number one, which is Ms. Barbara Lee, Director of the Department of Toxic Substances Control, DTSC. Ms. Lee, welcome. If there's anyone that you'd like to introduce, family, loved ones, please do so. And then I'd ask you to make a statement. And then after that, we'll go to a Q&A.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I do have family here with me today. I would like to introduce my mother, Catherine Lee.
Where was she? Where would your mother be? Welcome, Ms. Lee.
And my two sons, Jonathan Lee, who flew in last night from Africa, where he's been working to be here today. And
welcome
my younger son, Antonio Joseph Suddy.
And Antonio? Antonio's here? Antonio. Welcome, Antonio.
And also my cousin, Michael Temple.
Okay, and Michael. Michael, welcome. Fantastic. Okay, welcome and thank you very much. And
Thank you.
Why don't we begin?
Is it appropriate? I have a few staff members here. Would it be
If you'd like to
appropriate
introduce
to
them, let's do
recognize
this so
them
quickly.
as well?
Yes.
My chief deputy, Miriam Ingenito.
Mary? Mary.
Deputy Director of our Safer Consumer Products Program, Dr. Meredith Williams.
There you go.
My Deputy Director of our Hazardous Waste Management Program, Elise Rothschild. My Chief Counsel, Mr. Reed Sato.
Ms. Reed.
The newest member to join our staff, Ana Mascareñas, our Assistant Director for Environmental
My
Justice.
constituent. Welcome.
Yes, indeed. And of course, Josh Tooker, who is our Legislative Director, is here as well.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to all the staff from DTSC. So, Ms. Lee, why don't we begin? And if you have a statement prepared, please begin.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I want to thank you for taking the time to speak with me today about the future of the Department of Toxic Substances Control and my leadership of it. I'd like to open by telling you why I chose to take the helm of this challenged department. In my life, I've been blessed with a strong family, a good education, and a range of experiences that many people are not afforded. I understand how fortunate I've been. I believe very deeply that I have to use my knowledge and skills and the other blessings that I've been given to help others, to solve problems, and to try to make a positive change in the world around me. I was told when I was approached for this position that if I wanted a job where I go home at the end of the day and know that I made a real difference in the lives of real people, that this is the job for me. I have spent much of my life acquiring the skills to lead this organization. The department needs clear and consistent standards for environmental protection and for how we do our job and serve the people of California. I have decades of experience establishing and enforcing environmental standards and a history of uniting people with very disparate views to achieve progress. I will use that experience to build partnerships, create strong programs, and bring daylight into DTSC's decision-making. I believe this is where I am meant to be, and I want to assure you I am fully committed to be here for the long term. The department's mission is vitally important. It deserves the very best we can give. With strong leadership, I believe this department is capable of carrying out its mission to a very high standard of care. It can become as highly regarded as any agency in this state. I plan to lead us there. I want to thank the governor for giving me the opportunity to serve the people of California in this capacity, and again, you for taking the time to speak with me today. I look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lee. Thank you very much for your statement. I will say, indeed, you are a very courageous woman for taking on the helm of this department at DTSC. A couple points I'd like to start off with, and then we'll go deeper into the questions from the members themselves. One is your appointment by the governor is the 10th appointment of a director in 10 years. So we've had 10 directors in 10 years. And this is an agency that has been plagued historically with many irregularities, lack of clarity, a lack of a uniform standards that are across the board that are easily interpreted by both committee members as well as businesses. And there's a lot of other adjectives, obviously, I can add, but in short, to cut to the chase, this is an agency that is deeply, deeply in trouble. So you obviously come in at a very crucial time with regards to the public morale and confidence in this department, specifically this department, DTSC, is as low as it gets. I'm not quite sure if it can even get even lower than it is right now. So it is an agency that is deeply troubled, unquestionably. I think you know that as well, too. Obviously, you're coming to this position with eyes wide open, knowing exactly what you're walking into. The couple things I want to go through, and I want you to feel free to make any notes, any notations that you'd like of some questions that we will be asking specifically. Number one, on the issue of hazardous waste permitting, obviously, I think you know very well that there have been many concerns about how DTSC regulates hazardous waste management by issuing the permits, tracking the generation of the transportation, tracking the generation, the transportation, the disposal of hazardous waste, coordinating cleanup of contaminated sites, and seeking recovery of funds from parties responsible for the contamination. As you know very well, on October 2nd of 2013, an outside evaluator, CPSHR Consulting, found that DTSC does not have a standardized criteria to determine when to issue a hazardous waste permit. So one of the questions we'll ask, obviously, is if they don't have one, why don't they have one? And if they do have one, what is the criteria? If they have yet to establish one, when will it be established? Also, too, without standardized criteria, DTSC is criticized for issuing permits on an ad hoc basis, without assurance that the decision is based on concrete, verifiable, quantifiable, and enforceable objectives. So, in short, we have an agency that's been plagued by subjective decision-making by the regulators. So without any lack of transparency, a standardized uniform criteria that's established for your standards to create for the issuance of permits, it's sort of kind of like flying by the seat of your pants. No one really understands what the criteria is, and that's short. And the end result is communities that face very severe contamination. So the issue on permits is one issue that we're going to tackle. Another one here is high-profile cases, obviously in my district in Vernon, Exide Technologies in 2014-15, and the Kettleman, I should say, Hills Hazardous Waste Facility that since 1994 have faced significant environmental justice concerns from the communities that surround those two specific facilities. That have led, obviously, to the criticism of the department's permitting procedures and responsiveness to community concerns. So another thing that I'd like you to note and also speak to is the issue of the concerns from the community as a whole towards the lack of judgment, the insensitivity of the department to the community, whether it be in Kettleman City, whether it be in my backyard, the city of Vernon, for communities such as Boyle Heights, East Los Angeles, Lincoln Heights, a little further away, Maywood, and other surrounding southeast communities, even parts of probably South LA. But not just focus on Kettleman and Vernon, but obviously we have a lot of other facilities throughout the state of California. We have communities, primarily communities of color, communities at the lower economic strata who suffer just in general to make ends meet on a daily fashion. And on top of that, they have a plant that has not received the proper permitting or should have been shut down many years ago, but because of lack of enforcement and strong regulation. So those are a couple issues for right now. Now, I know that the report entitled, which I know you're familiar, Golden Wastelands, prepared by the Consumer Watchdog organization. It was issued out a couple years ago in February, stated, one, DTSC settles cases out of court with facility operators. In short, they're consistently lowballed. So sometimes you should settle out of court, no question about it. Sometimes you got to fight and go all the way. But there's a track record that's consistent lowballing. In other words, settle the case very quickly, rapidly, get out of sight, out of mind, and move forward. So that's one of the criticisms. Two, levies ineffective fines. In short, the fines are very small to begin with. So there is no teeth with regards to the fines to deal with the polluter. Three, fails to develop and refer cases for prosecution. Now, if the case is severe enough, and if the case should be referred to the Attorney General or to the respective district attorney of that respective jurisdiction, the reality is, at least from this report, and obviously you can speak to this, and this is, before your time, and we're conscious of that also too, that many of these cases that warrant, obviously, the involvement of either the Attorney General or the District Attorney have not been referred to these respective prosecutorial agencies. It was also asserted that the DTSC often awards permits without environmental review and has not revoked the permit of a serial violator of environmental laws in more than 15 years. So I want you to note that there. And we're going to go back, we're going to go to the issue of permitting, the permitting backlog that currently exists. Now, due to a backlog in processing applications for hazardous waste permit renewals, many facilities, as you know, are continually are operating on continued permits due to their applications not being reviewed on time. So now we're going to tackle the issues. We're going to go methodically one by one, but now permitting backlog that currently exists. The same report that I made reference to earlier from the outside consulting firm CPS HR found that there has been significant dissatisfaction with the performance of the permitting office, directed at the cost of length and time in completing the permit process, and a perception that the office does not deny or revoke permits as often as it should to address community concerns. And going back again to the point I made earlier, the perceived lack of insensitivity of the department towards these communities who suffer the brunt of the contamination, whether it's what they breathe or it's into the groundwater. Now, a couple of the hazardous waste facility operations who have had their permits expire, and this is up to date, this is March 2015. These will be the more egregious ones, the one that I highlight right now. These are the more egregious ones. BKK, sanitary landfill, their expiration date was June 24, 1992 in West Covina. June 24th, 1992. And they're still operating on temporary permits. Fibrotech out of Santa Fe Springs, 1996. Their expiration date was 1996. Clean Harbors, Westmoreland, 2004. The Boeing Company, Canoga Park, that is in Simi Valley, 2005. Clean Harbors, which is in Buttonwillow, 2006. Evoqua Water Technologies, Los Angeles, 2006. Wood Cells and Refining, San Jose, California, 2007. Bayside Oil, Santa Cruz, 2007. Best Environmental, 2007, Lancaster. Ramos Environmental Services, 2009, just down this road from here, West Sacramento. And the two final ones here, they're both the Livermore, the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories, 09 and 13 respectively, Livermore Tracy. Now this is just, these are the more egregious cases. Obviously, there are more on the list of facilities operating throughout the state of California. Again, on expired DTS permits that for whatever reasons, and I'm sure I want to give you an opportunity to explain, they have been running for decades without permits. And then concurrently, there has been very grave concerns, and I think scientific data, empirical data that has demonstrated that the health of these communities have been put in peril. So we're going to start with this because I know it's a lot to chew off at this moment right now. But again, the issue of hazardous waste permitting, the issue with regards to the responsiveness or lack thereof to the community, surrounding community, some of the allegations put forth in this report entitled Golden Wasteland, and obviously the backlog, the permitting backlog with some of the egregious cases that I just articulated. Understanding that all of this has happened before your time, obviously you're keenly aware that you're walking into this position eyes wide open. You know, no one's I don't think the governor has fooled you into like telling you this is going to be a cushy job, you know, and everyone's going to surround you with a lot of love and praise, you know. I understand this is a tough position, but this is again, an agency, a department that has been plagued systematically and culturally with some very severe problems. So why don't we start off with that right there?
Okay, well, thank you for the time you've taken, not just in preparation for this hearing, but over the last few years to try to shape the direction the department's going and improve the programs that the department implements. You've done a remarkable job representing your constituents. We have, as you observed, the audit done by CPS that laid out a number of shortcomings in our permitting program. And in response to that, the department developed a permitting enhancement work plan. There are 88 deliverable items in that work plan. We received funding in last year's budget to begin work on that work plan. We've completed about 60% of the action items in the plan. We have about 35 left to go in the coming fiscal year. Among the things that we've done is we've established a series of guidance documents for staff that standardize processes and criteria. They lay out the order in which activities are done, assign roles and responsibilities and accountability measures, and we track the work that's being done on the permits to make sure that they're moving along at the pace that we want them to move along at. I want to be clear that moving things faster is not being done at the expense of quality work. We've done a Lean Six Sigma project under the umbrella of the governor's office through GoBiz. And with that Lean Six Sigma project, which is a set of tools to analyze in a quantitative way manufacturing and business processes, it's used by Fortune 500 companies around the world, and it allows us to look at all of the steps in our permitting process and figure out which ones aren't working, where there are time delays, where there are problems in quality, to identify those and to establish solutions to fix those problems. We did this specifically around the area of technical review because the macroscopic look at our permitting process showed that that was the area that was taking the longest time. So we have identified a target to reduce the average time to complete that review, that technical review, from an average of about 5 years to an average of about 2 years, and to do that for 90% of our permits. and we're well underway getting that done. We've identified, as you pointed out, 24 permits that have languished for far too long without action. Those permits were divided into 3 groups, and we received funding in the last fiscal year to begin work on clearing out that backlog. We issued permits for, or made permit decisions, didn't issue one of those permits, one was not issued, on 8 permits in the last fiscal year. We will take action on 9 in the coming fiscal year, and then we'll have 7 more to do in the 3rd year of our commitments. We are underway to complete all 9 of those decisions in the coming fiscal year, and I expect that all of those backlog permits will be cleared out by the end of the following fiscal year. While we're doing this, we're also working to put in place clear standards around some of the environmental protection pieces of our decision-making process. The one that I chose to act on first was the question of how do we evaluate a facility's compliance history when we're making a decision about its permit. The department is charged with doing that, but it's never been clear to anyone how that's done. And I would go further and say among the staff, it wasn't really clear how we should approach that. What we are doing is putting together a framework based on the matrix we use to evaluate the gravity of violations when we look at assessing penalties. And that matrix considers the extent of the harm done and the extent to which the violation deviated from the standard. So if it was close, but not quite there, or if it was really substantially far off from what it needed to be. We also factor into that the intent or the knowledge of the facility operators about the violation. Did they know they were out of compliance? Did they do it intentionally? And we also look at whether there were prior offenses. We're using that to come up with a quantitative score. That score can be added up for all of the violations over a set period of time. The statute requires us to look at the 3 years that precede the expiration date of the facility's permit. So we can add up the score for the violations that occur in that period of time and get an overall score for the facility's compliance picture. And we can use that to determine whether everything looks pretty good, whether there are concerns and we need to take follow-up action, look more closely at things, maybe require additional compliance demonstrations, or whether the facility is a candidate for permit denial. We did do that scoring on Exide. Exide's score was higher than any other facility. That was not the basis for the denial that I told them I was going to issue, but it definitely informed us as we moved forward. We're taking this concept, we've begun talking with people about it just recently. I expect to have informal workshops this summer, and then we'll make formal rulemaking proposals. It's going to be an open and public process to put this into place. It will be clear, it will be accountable. People will be able to see how we made the decisions we made. Facilities will understand what is coming, and you will be able to hold us accountable for what we're doing. That's the first one that I started working on. As you know, we also have worked with your staff with some ideas about how to improve our permitting appeals process. And we hope that by working with you, we may ultimately be able to establish a permit appeals board or some other independent and fair mechanism to review the decisions we made when there are disputes about them. That's another layer of accountability that I would look to put into place. I'm looking for ways to improve our program that are durable. As you pointed out, there have been quite a few directors in the last few years. I don't want to do something by policy or directive that has us move in one direction only to have it move back in a different direction when the next director comes in. So we're looking at durable change through regulation or through statute where that's appropriate, and other mechanisms that will make sure that what we build now sustains the performance of the department going forward. And I want to emphasize, we're doing this in a way that is going to be open and transparent with lots of opportunity for input.
Let's go back to the system that you currently have now, if I'm correct, that you've identified, obviously, the backlog issue, and now you can reduce them from an average of 5 years, if I heard you correctly, an average of 5 years to get to the actual, a decision-making, whether a permit will be issued or not issued, if I'm correct, to now you believe, you believe you can get it permitted within a 24-month period now, or is this already working in the system now that you can get it permitted, a business within 24 months? Explain the difference. Yeah.
It's a good question. Our target is to issue or take action on 90% of the permits in a 2-year period, an average 2-year period. There will be some permits that will take longer. Some of these facilities are very, very complex, and we want to allow enough time for really robust public input into the decision-making process, and that kind of input does take time. So there will be cases where it does take longer, but I do believe we will be able to take action on 90% of our permits in a 24-month period. We're on a trajectory to do that. We're not there yet, but we're getting there.
That is a remarkable number to have 90% of, at least a projected number, 90% within a 24-month, 2-year period. Walk us through how you're able to do that, and goes as detailed as possible, technically speaking. How are you able to do this?
Thank you. As I mentioned, we did one Lean Six Sigma project.
So I can write it. What's it called? One Sigma?
Oh, it's a Lean Six Sigma. It combines two manufacturing evaluation strategies. One is lean manufacturing, and one is a Six Sigma analysis. Combines the two of them together. It's a very robust, data-driven approach to examining processes. What it does is it gets past people's preconceptions. People go into it thinking, oh, I know what the problem is, and they fix the problem they think they know exists. It isn't the real problem, and so it doesn't make the change that everyone wants. This process brings people past the preconceived ideas. It's data-driven. It identifies where the real issues are in the process, and then we take each of those issues one at a time. We do a detailed Lean Six Sigma review of that element of the process and come up with a solution that improves that element. We go through element by element and systematically improve the process, improve the quality, decrease the waste and delay in the process. And what that does is it compresses the total time, because all of those individual elements where there was waste and delay, where people didn't know who was supposed to do what, where decisions were not made in a timely way because there weren't clear criteria for making them, as we get each of those put in place, that part of the process becomes much more efficient and effective, and the total process is improved.